Welcome to Jack's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, or Jack, and it is time for another Top 5 Wednesday. And this is a good reads group created by Ginger Reads Laney and Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, who is currently the host. And basically every Wednesday we will get a topic to do for all the Wednesdays of the month. And this week's topic is most disappointing books of 2018. Most of these, with the exception of one, I don't have, so I'm gonna be lazy and not show you that one. But I do still have it. I've just had it. I think no. I think I don't have. I don't think I have it anymore. I might have given that away because I gave it. I might have donated it to the bookstore, so I might not have it anyway. So never mind. Okay. So here are my most disappointing reads of 2018. So first is 1984 by George Orwell. I know it's a classic, and I didn't hate it, but it was just kind of boring to me. I mean, it was a fast read and everything, and I get in the characters, I get why they seem kind of boring and don't have much personalities because of the world that this story is about. Like, there's no individuality, and I know that George Orwell was trying to make a point with the book, with the no originality, no individualism, but it was not, like, I do think, and don't hate me for this, but I do think some of these classics are, not overhyped, but, what is it? Something, I could think of it earlier, when I was talking about Canterbury Tales. But basically, I feel like they're not as brilliant as they're not as great as people make them out to be. Like, I get their importance at the time, but that they came out, I get their value, I do, but I think people, make too much of a big deal of some of these classics. They're not that fabulous, and some of them are dated. Some of them, it's like we moved on. Like, I understand their value and their importance, but, it's 2019, I was about to say, 18, but 2019, so, we need to study other books in schools and stuff, but, I mean, if you like it, that's great, nothing wrong with that, but that's just how I feel, personally. So, in 1984 was one of those books, although I am glad I read it. And I'm glad I also read the other famous book by George Orwell, which is Animal Farm. And I definitely like that one better. I really was more interested in that one. Okay, the next one is number 2, City of Dark Magic by Magnus Flight, which this was actually a book by 2 authors. So this is the name is a pseudonym. Okay, when I read the back, it sounds so cool and interesting, but then the book it sucked. For me anyway. It was not very good, I mean, there was only one character that I was actually interested, that I actually really liked the story. And it was a lot of sex in it. Like the protagonist of the story was a very sexual person. And I can't remember why but there was a reason why she had to have sex at random times, but I don't remember why. And the characters like I said, there was only one character that I actually liked. I mean, the concept was kind of interesting. I liked the plot, the concept of the story, which is kind of a time travel thing, but you're not literally time traveling, you're like more mentally time traveling. Which I was kind of disappointed, because I was hoping the characters would travel through time. I'm trying to remember what the other things that were disappointing about the book. It was just a very, it's like, that's it? Really? Like, it was just very, I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't remember why. What were my issues, except for the fact that there was lots of sexual activity in it. Although some of the sex scenes were kind of funny. Like, there's one scene where the protagonist and the love interest have sex on a statue or up against a statue and accidentally break it, I think, if I remember correctly, which that was kind of funny. I also thought it was the reason why they were able to travel to the time, because it's Beethoven is part of this. Like, the female protagonist is obsessed with Beethoven, and she's doing an exhibit on him. That's part of the plot. And how they were able to, like, take this drug, it was like that's how they were able to mentally time travel through a drug. And it was like, the way they were able to do that was using Beethoven's toenail. Or that's what the pill looked like, his toenail. It was like, really? That's just so gross. Why did you have to go that route? I mean, I guess the authors were trying to be creative and funny, but to me, it just was gross that they were eating toenail. Like, you had to eat the drug, and that they were eating his toenails. It's just like, really? Can you come up with something a little less gross? And let's see, what else? What's the other? I was just thought about something else, but now I don't remember it again. Let's see what. Oh, I also was kind of. I mean, now I know there are such things as child prodigies, but the little girl, the child prodigy girl, was a little like. She was like a little too much of a genius. She felt a little too unbelievable to me. I mean, there were some things that the authors had her character doing, and I was like, okay, I know she's supposedly a child prodigy, but I have a hard time believing that she can do that. Or that she's like, oh, I remember the thing that bugged me. This is kind of a spoiler, but they had her essentially like, they asked her to run the museum because they offered it to the protagonist, but then she turned him down. And then for some reason they asked this girl who was like 10 or 8 years old or something. Like, I think she was at least 10 or maybe 13. I don't remember, but she was still really young. And it's like, you offered her a job. She's like a preteen. You're asking her to run the museum. I know she's a child prodigy, but come on. Like, at least Richie Rich was like probably like 16 or 18 at the time. But it was just a little too weird. It's like, really? She's a kid. She's still a kid. And you actually are giving her this, allowing her to run your office? It's like, that felt so unrealistic. I know it's fiction and it's fantasy, but come on. And like I said, the only character I actually liked was this grumpy dwarf. He was really funny and snarky, and I loved his character. And there are 3 books, and it's a trilogy. And when I read the description, it was like, I have no interest in these. Especially because they use one of the tropes that I really hate, which is I think they use the amnesia plot, or like something similar to it, or no, actually, it was the fact that they had like his distant cousin, was seducing the love interest, and so it's not an amnesia plot, but it's the whole putting this. Oh, it was kind of like the love triangle and the whole idea of separating the couple and adding drama and all that. And so I'm not, like I said, I'm more tolerant of love triangles than most people, but... Okay, now that I've spent all my time on that one, let me get to the others. Okay, number 3, A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. I think I've read one of her other books before this one. But this one was I was kind of disappointed in this one. It felt kind of boring. It was very like a reading a textbook with a little more emotion in it, possibly, but I was bored with it. I thought I would like it, and maybe if I spent more time reading, if I wasn't, reminded in the back of my head that I'm gonna have to return this book, and if I could take my time and take a whole year to read it if I wanted to, then maybe maybe I eventually get into it, but the little bit I read of it was kind of boring. It was boring. I hate to use that for a book, but it was. And if you disagree, that's fine. I mean, but for me, it was. It was kind of okay. Number 4 was A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Again, this is another classic. I don't know if it's that I don't like Hemingway because I've only read one of his books, and I feel like I do need to check out another one of his books. But again, I'm not inclined to read his books. I'm not interested. This was more of something that I decided to read because my aunt loves Hemingway, and she was like telling me I should check it out, especially because she said that Hemingway kind of reminds her of my dad. Some of his personality traits and his interests. Not necessarily his personality traits, because my dad is not one of those super kind of people that abandons his family and has a lot of wives and stuff, because he has a good marriage with my mom. That's not perfect, but he's not a player like Hemingway is. But the whole his hobbies and stuff, like the fishing and stuff, all those outdoor type hobbies that Hemingway likes, my dad likes those too. And his physical looks remind my aunt of my dad as well. So, I decided to go check it out because, and the book was, I didn't really like it. Like I said, I don't know if it's just that particular book, but it's basically a World War II book, and this one guy, the one soldier who's an ambulance driver for, this American soldier who's an ambulance driver for the Italian army. He meets a girl, he falls in love with her, and she with him, and it's all about their romance and how he deals with the whole being on the battlefield and everything. And it was just kind of boring. Again, it was kind of boring. And plus, the woman annoyed me. I mean, I know you could argue that, well, it was the time period and everything, because that's what my aunt did. Because I did tell her my feelings, because I believe, I wanted to discuss it. Unfortunately, it was not a good time to talk to her about it, because we were on a little family vacation with extended family. So a lot of stuff was going on, so I didn't really get a chance to talk to her more thoroughly about it. And I haven't talked to her since. We did talk about it a little bit. And that's what I want. I want to talk about, that's why I get so frustrated with my friends, because one of them is just kind of picky about what she reads, and then the other two just don't have time, and even though they do have time, they're not in the habit of reading books, so it's it gets so, and also, I think studying books in school kind of ruins reading for a lot of people, but it's so frustrating, because I think the two of my friends that are in school, that were in school, that's the only reason why they didn't read a lot as much as I did. I have a feeling they would be very much more open to what it wouldn't be as picky. And I just want to discuss with my friends and talk about the books and share books and stuff. And I can't do that. So I was despite the fact that I didn't like Farewell to Arms, I was very excited to talk about it with my aunt. But like I said, it was just not the best time for us. And there was a lot of stuff going on. But like I said, the female woman was just really annoying, just insipid, and just so obedient and submissive to the guy and everything, and she was very yes dear towards him, and she said there were 2 words that kept being repeated, darling. She kept saying darling, 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 I love you, darling, darling, are you mad at me, or darling, is this okay, or darling, I want to do this. And she was so doing things for him because it made him happy. And I don't know, and I guess in defense of the book, it was more my modern woman mindset was thinking, what's wrong with you, woman? Come on, stand up for yourself. Stop being so submissive and obedient. And of course, I also was, it was a different time period. It was early 1900s, I believe, because World War I. But it wasn't, and I'm just not interested in war books. You know, I mean, I've read a couple war books because I feel like, oh, I should read these and maybe I'll like them. But I kind of like more of the, not necessarily the books that talk about the battlefield stuff, but the ones that talk about the politics and the emotional story between the man and the woman. Which I know with those kind of stories, you're gonna get the battlefield stuff too. But But like I said, I care more about the politics and the relationship between the soldier and the love and his love and his family. But it was a fast read, so. Okay, so the last one is, this is another popular author. That is Dodger by Terry Pratchett, Terry Pratchett is the author of the Discworld. I haven't read the Discworld books, but even people that have read the Discworld books, I think some of them were disappointed by this book. So this was not a fantasy book. It was, contemporary, or historical, not contemporary. It was not set in modern times. It was a contemporary story. So this book, the main character, I was just a couple of chapters away from the end, but then I was like, you know what, I'm done. I want to take this book back, so screw it, I'm not going to finish it. But I was like so close to the end. I only had like a few more chapters left, like a handful of chapters left. But I was starting to like run out of steam in this. And although, again, this is another one that, although the chapters were kind of longer than usual, and that didn't help either. Which is why I always say that I've been spoiled by YA when it comes to, compared to reading adult books, because adult books, like, with the exception of a few YA books, some of them, like some of the epic fantasy books, are a little longer than some YA books, but like, this is why I take forever reading a book like this, because the chapters are not short. Or a book like this. The chapters are so long, and like, although with a book like that, some of the chapters aren't that long. It's just a long book. So I always say I've been spoiled by young adult books, because they're not usually as long, because I think they consider that a teenager's attention span is not going to be, it's an improvement compared to like a kid, but it's still not as, like, they sometimes as teenagers we would rather go to the mall or listen to music or hang out with our friends, but then although I do think that teenagers, if you love reading, then you're gonna, it's because you're focused on reading. But, first of all, in Dodger, the main character was so like to me, he felt so much like a Gary Stu. He was so perfect. Everybody loved him. Even the people that hated him at first loved him by the end of it. He was so annoyingly perfect at what he did. He never got caught. He never got hurt. He always won the fight. And I just wanted to be like, and after a while, hearing that, that the particular British accent in my head, after a while, it got kind of annoying. I can't remember what the kind of accent it was, but I mean, of course, that was more just me assuming that's the kind of accent he had. But that's kind of because it reminded me of Oliver Twist, which that was the cool thing. That's the one thing I did like, was that I think it was kind of a love letter to Dickens, and there was a lot of references to Dickens novels and stuff like Oliver Twist. And it made me think that the author was trying to say, oh, this was the inspiration, even though this book came after, that he's saying, like, if the story really happened, then Dodger would be the inspiration for the character of Dodger in Oliver Twist. And I did like the historical, like, Charles Dickens was in it, some of the political figures were in the story, the Queen was in the story, but, like, it was just, the novel was just, like, after a while it got kind of old, and everything was like, yeah, I know it's fiction and everything, but it is still historical, and it's like, it just felt like too easy and too simple, and it's hard for me to sum it up. I bet another person would do so much better at explaining their dislike of this novel. But if they agree with me on it, that is. I was so close because I figured, let me just finish this out. And I didn't like it. I almost got to the end. I was like, you know what? I need to take this back to the library. I'm done with it. And it got to the point where I didn't want to read it. That was the other reason. It was like, I didn't want to read it anymore. And as I was reading, I kept getting mad. Like, I wanted to see how things would work out for Dodge. Part of me didn't want to know how things would work out in the end. But then it was like that Dodger was just drove me so crazy, and not in a good way, that I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'll just look it up. Which I kind of did. So those are my most disappointing reads of 2018. I would love to know your most disappointing books of this past year. Feel free to share below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already and you like this video and you want to see more of my lovely face and hear my thoughts. And as always, I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye.